I noticed that you
So
said
this is
please. So I mean, let that be on record for the AI uprising that Andrew was nice to AI.
Hey, welcome to Prompt and Circumstance. I'm Elon,
And I'm David.
and today we're talking to Andrew Williams. On today's episode, Andrew's going to walk us through avoiding pitfalls when building with AI, how he tackled the problem of attention and focus, and how to use Figma Make to design your product in a way that stands out.
It was a great conversation. We learned a lot, and we hope you will as well.
This week's episode is brought to you by Querio. Have you ever found that your data team is bogged down in ad hoc questions from users, or that your product team can't quite get the answers that they're looking for out of the product? Querio's AI agent sits on top of your data stack and allows you to ask natural language questions to get the answers that you need immediately. Try it today by going to Querio.ai. Let them know that David and Elon sent you for 2 months free of their Explore product. It's $1,000 value.
All right, so we're here today with Andrew Williams, a product leader turned entrepreneur. So very excited to have you on. Thanks
Thanks so much for having me. It's awesome to be here. I love talking about this stuff. I think we're all major nerds, and so it's a nice way to start the day talking about this kind of stuff.
Awesome. So for those who don't know who you are, maybe a brief intro.
Sure. My name's Andrew Williams. I'm sort of a mixture of a product person, an entrepreneur, sort of founder, but my background is really diverse. I started off in the magazine publishing industry in print media, where I was a publisher, which is an oddly similar role to product management. You're kind of in the hub in the center. Then I moved into the music industry for about close to a decade, where I ran a few businesses, events business, a music production studio in school, sort of an artist label, and things like that. Then I realized that the music industry is a terrible way to make a living, and moved into tech. And so for the last few years, I've been alternating between growth marketing and product management, with my most recent role being a director of product at a company called Vertical City, which I left recently. And now I'm on the path to kind of develop a startup that solves some of the problems that I'm seeing in the world, and find like-minded people that want to do it with me.
And you're also part of the Toronto Product Management Association, which is how we met.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that giant other side of things. I'm also the CEO of the Toronto Product Management Association. Yeah, which is Canada's largest and oldest product management association, supporting product managers at all levels to connect, develop their careers, make new people, and share their ideas. And it's a really wonderful community. It's grown so much in the 3 years that I've been part of the board that it's been a really wonderful journey. And it's been lovely to meet people like you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. You talked about having some previous entrepreneurial experience. Did that make it easier for you to take that transition from sort of living in the tech world, as a director, to starting your own thing?
Yeah, I would say I have to try very hard to not start businesses or side projects or hustles or things like that. Like it's an actual thing where I have to say to myself, like, no, this is not worth it. Like, you don't spin this off. Like, you gotta, I'm very much on trying to right now trying to do a few less things and focus on sort of quality of quality. But I just love building. I love creating. I love seeing something come out where there was nothing before. And I think that's something that a lot of product people share.
Awesome. And so focus, I think, is thematic to what it is that you're trying to solve. Maybe tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, both personally and professionally, focus has been the challenge of my adult life, I would say. So on the professional side, every single business that I've probably worked for, including ones that I've started, suffer from the challenge of wanting to do too many things, allocating resources over too many different areas, and suffering as the result. It's a perennial problem at every level: executive, individual contributor, spreading yourself thin. And when you get to be part of an organization or work with people that are really good at laser focusing, it's really amazing to see what happened. Likewise, in my personal life, I grew up and came into adulthood as social media and the internet and smartphones took over our lives. And, because of starting businesses and working in media, social media was such a huge part of my life. And what that really cultivated was a digital addiction and that kind of feeling where I just couldn't go without consuming content. I couldn't go without, checking things, notifications, media, things like that. And I realized just like how much it's eroding my ability to focus, how much it's eroding my ability to enjoy the moment. And then also like, kind of get the things done that I wanted to do. And so over the years, I've come up with a ton of different systems that have helped me personally. But as I was looking for a new thing, I wanted to kind of combine a lot of the strategies that have worked really well for me and the approach that I think is a little bit different from some of the ones out there. Share it with people that might be suffering similar problems.
I'm curious, how do you decide that, yeah, this is a big enough problem that it's actually, there's a business there?
So it's one of these interesting things where I'm going through that right now where it's really obvious it's a big enough problem because there's not a human that I talk to in the world that doesn't have some sort of negative relationship with their technologies. And almost all of them either have sort of this latent like fear or obligation that they want to get better. They want to, spend less time scrolling. They want to get more things done. They want to spend more time being present. But that siren's call of their phone or their email or news or social media or whatever it is, it interrupts everyone. And some people are very conscious of this, but a lot of people are not very conscious of this. And they just see the impacts on their lives. And so you see it in legislation in schools across the world. You see it in how different people go on things like digital detoxes. There's a lot of people searching for solutions. There's also about 1,000 companies doing different solutions for this. So there's definitely a big problem here. Now, the business side, whether or not I can make this a business, whether or not I can make something that people will pay money for, well, that's the challenge that I'm on right now. But I say that we are the guinea pig generation. We figured out, we get to experience all the negative externalities of social media and AI. Generations after us will have to learn from our mistakes.
The problem is enormous. I think about how there's multiple PhD level people at each of those companies that their full-time job is to capture you. And there's no way that like just through our own minds, we're just gonna be like, okay, I'll just scroll just for a little bit. We're not winning that battle. We need tools on our side.
So like the this is like, you're taking words out of my mouth here, and this is like perfectly describes like the intelligence of a generation. Like the smartest minds are going into two fields: finance and getting you to stay like sticky on like various apps, like onboarding and UX and side of things. And so when I was thinking about what I wanted to build, the app is called Heyday because I want to bring the internet back to a time where it was a little bit better.
That's a great name.
And the premise is it's almost an anti-UX app.
Mm-hmm.
It's taking ad block to the next level. It's allowing you to customize your internet experience so that you can strip away a lot of the manipulation, a lot of the addictive components of it, and still use the apps and the sites that you love, but maybe use them in a little bit more healthy way. I'm not much of an abstinence person when it comes to these things. I don't think the approach that a lot of people take is like, okay, I'm just going to cut this out and I'm not going to go on Facebook or I'm not going to use LinkedIn.
Yeah, cold turkey, right?
Yeah, cold turkey. And like everyone almost always goes back to it in some ways, but maybe with some help and with this tools like Heyday, they can create a relationship with those apps that allows them to use them in very deliberate, specific ways, and then slowly break down the reliance and the siren's call of your digital technology.
That's a great way of putting it. So I believe you vibe coded this. At least you started off vibe coding it. So maybe walk us through what that journey was like.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, like everyone right now, you want to dive right in and come up with 7 different projects. And so I did. My vibe coding journey started with trying to replace things in my life that I was already paying for. So I started with like a personal website because I was paying Squarespace for it. And it's like, I think it wasn't doing anything that complicated. I was like, this is a good place to start. I started with Lovable, which I think a lot of people will know of. But Lovable is great. It's a great starting place. And then very quickly, I realized how much it could be used for this is early last year, used for my day job. And so I started building up sort of internal tools to see what could be used for that. And that's when I started really kind of forking, like, so in my mind, where I could be going, because the cost to getting an idea into the world, to testing it, just plummeted. The pace of development and change was so rapid that when I did decide to leave my work, I just threw myself all in to learn as much as I could. And that's where I got into Cursor and working within an IDE. Like, I've got so much more empathy and so much more consideration and so much more respect for some of the really thorny problems that developers face. It's completely changed how I think about product and working with developers. For that reason alone, like, people should be doing this, is because you'll have so much more empathy for your colleagues.
So what drove that decision to go from Lovable to Cursor?
You can just do stuff. Just like take that as a life thing. Like, if you think you're not technical, that's like a self-limiting belief. I thought it was technical for the average person, but I didn't think it was development technical. So then I just sat myself down and was like, no, you can do this. Like, thousands of people a day, start coding. It's never been easier. You've got a coach that is on 24/7 that can just walk you through. So just do it. You kind of are forced to dive into it once you want really specific knowledge and to be able to get something that you think can actually stand up in a production environment. And I should say, stand up in a production environment at small scale. There's a whole side of this things where anything that I'm building and sort of like most people are building that is vibe coded, it's not going to be like 100,000 user type of thing. It's going to be a small user case, but a lot of the times that's fine.
It's enough to validate, right? Yeah.
It's enough to make people a lot of money. If you have 4 customers and they are high paying customers, you don't need massive server infrastructure.
So I'm wondering, can you show us what you built?
Yeah, absolutely.
This week's episode is also brought to you by N8N. Its beautiful UI allows any user to go in and experiment with building AI agents, but also create the types of workflows and evals that are required for production level agents. Try it today by visiting the link in our show notes, and you'll get 2 weeks free.
So this is one of the earlier versions of the marketing website. It's live right now, Heyday Focus, if you want to go check it out. So when I was thinking about building the solution, I wanted to start with something that was the most friendly to what I knew about AI-assisted development and vibe coding tools. And I wanted to make this problem smaller. Like, I didn't want to be starting off with an iPhone app, for example. Phones are obviously the biggest leech of our attention, but it's a whole other world to compete in that. So I started with actually a Chrome extension because I wanted something that would work for my life and kind of combine a bunch of ideas. So the sort of the beta is live, I think, the week that this podcast is coming out. And so this is the UI, so the options. So what it allows you to do is the workflow is you create sort of a list of sites. So it can be just like site lists. And then you have a lot of different categories of different, say, types of websites, streaming. Say these are your, most sticky types of things that distract you the most. And so what you can do, like so this is my work 9 to 5 list. And so what I'll do is I don't want to be able to, maybe I want to limit my ability to go to streaming websites, waste time on, Netflix or YouTube. So I can just, go in and block, all of the streaming websites in one go. Let's say news is maybe like could be used for working or research and things like that, but I want to make it a little bit less sticky. I want to make it something that I am less likely to just endlessly scroll. And so one of the features that I really like and I use a lot in my life is I turn everything black and white. So this is the decolor feature. And what a lot of people don't realize is that if like one of the reasons why the internet and your phone and everything is so addictive is because it's really vibrant. It's really stimulating. And when everything's just in black and white, you will absolutely spend less time just consuming things. You will focus more in on text. You will focus more in on actions that you are trying to do rather than, the recommendations here or the comments there. It actually changes how your brain considers the information. So I try and spend most of my time on the internet completely in black and white. And then the other feature would be that I had. So for social media, this is a really tough one. So I use social media for work. Like, it could be TPMA, like my association, or it could be, LinkedIn, sending messages. So that I will also decolor it. But then I had this feature called Simplify, which allows you to remove key elements of the website. So it removes the news feed, the notification badges, news models, things like that. And then there's another feature where I can set a limit to the number of times I go to something. So maybe I only want to spend 30 minutes max, LinkedIn a day. So once this is all gone, I can set up a schedule that works for my timeline. So, I don't want these running all the time. So I just want it during my workday. And so let's go check out LinkedIn. So you can see LinkedIn, it's set to gray, and it's removed the news feed. Let's see, I've got a little pop down right now, so I could remove my notification badges. Like things like notification badges are such like a hidden suck of attention, but a lot of time is if you can just remove them from the website, if you can remove like sidebars, ad banners.
Amazing. Thank you. So I'm curious, Andrew, as we look at this is, you talked about simplifying down the problem. You focus on a Chrome extension, not an iPhone app, for example. But this is still incredibly feature rich and it's going into beta. So tools like Cursor, Lovable, Replit allow you to add features to your product really easily. And that an important process for product folks, especially product folks who are building using Vibecoding tools, is to actually push back against the instinct to like, well, there's another piece of the problem here. Let me solve that. So how did you find that balance for yourself? How did you think about that as you built this product?
I mean, it's such a good question. And it's, again, so we kind of started off our conversation with a conversation about focus and what you focus on. And so my initial version, like the slimming down, the core features were block, decolor, and simplify. And then the other differentiator was this kind of like the UI that was that impact grid is what I call it, where you can kind of assign, mix and match different things. When I did sort of a survey of the, literally hundreds of other apps that are attacking this problem in different ways. A lot of them included things like blocking. Some of them included things like, trying to remove things like, videos from pages and things like that. None of them included decolor, and only a few of them had this concept of schedules and mixing and matching. But I knew if I even wanted to start this thing in a way that at least put my own spin on it and that kind of served my own purposes, I needed to get a little bit further down the feature path. The other side of it is also, I'm taking a lot of this as a learning opportunity. So, actually, maybe there's a concept here that in my development, I actually came up with a version of this in October, but it didn't have authentication. And I didn't realize, a lot of the user flows and a lot of the concepts of it weren't really well developed. It was vibed out. And so I got myself into that kind of cul-de-sac that we talked about. And that's where I kind of realized the value of what I call creating a shadow app. And so what I describe a shadow app as is before you actually code anything, you should use a tool to visually code or prototype everything to get your feelings around the whole experience. So I can just go in and test some kind of have the feelings of it. Yeah. So right now I just switched to Figma Make. I'm sure a lot of you people will have heard of Figma. Figma Make is their vibe coding platform that they released last year. It sucked for most of the year, and now it's really good.
I think we've only mentioned it in name, like, so we know of it. Yeah.
Yeah, you may have heard of V0. Other people might have used V0. I was using V0 up until about 2 weeks ago, and now I'm on Figma Make for my primary.
Okay. So how does it compare to the other vibe coding tools out there that you would choose this one here?
I'm looking for a tool that is like it's not really about functionality, it's about feel and look and the UI experience. The things that you should index on is just like quality of design and cost and how quickly it works. And so V0 was like my number one for this. V0 by Vercel. I used that all last year. It's amazing. It's still amazing. But one lovely thing that Figma Make has is you can convert this entire design into a Figma file, and it's now all editable. So it allows like a crazy layer of, you can come up with a UI design, you can explore something that, this is kind of a copy of my app. It doesn't have any of like the functionality, but it looks like it. But it's really easy to see what something looks like. This week, I was doing a sort of a UI update because my version 1, I was getting some feedback that it had some problems. So here's like an example of the app. It's fine. Some of the feedback was it kind of looks like a government UI. And so I was like, okay, this is a good opportunity to have Figma Make help me create a little bit more modern, a little bit more calm, a little bit more aligned with the ethos of what I'm trying to build in terms of my app. And so, came up with a system prompt around sort of the design philosophy that I was going for. And I don't want to say it one-shotted it, but it pretty much one-shotted it by me just putting in screenshots of my app, it rebuilding it, and then me tweaking it with a few prompts.
If I understand this correctly, Andrew, you had the initial sort of mock-up of the site, and then you brought it into Figma, and then you brought it into Figma Make, and you said, hey, could you make this look a little bit better?
Yeah. So, here you can see it sort of is the, say, initial design. So, and then I, created a prompt. So this is sort of like, I'm really big in giving these models and agents quite a lot of like philosophical context. So my IDE is filled with like quite a lot of context files that are sort of like sublinked to make sure that like as we're building a PRD, as we're building like a development plan, it's referencing this is our design style, this is our component library, this is, how our front end works, how our back end works. And so it's always a good place to start with, here's a visual identity. So this is just like a straight prompt that I was kind of using Claude's aesthetic, the UI aesthetic of Claude as a starting off point. And so, we got into Figma Make. This is kind of what Figma Make did. And I did some color changes, things like that, went back and forth. And then from Figma Make, what you can ask it for is like in any of these tools, I asked it to help build a design system. So it gives you like the foundation colors, the foreground, the card backgrounds, the primary interactions, all of like the text hierarchies, things like that, status indicators, blah, 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 all of these things, which you can then now bring into your IDE and develop like a really strong sort of component library or sort of, I use a Claude skills file, drive all future development. And so it made pretty close to a one-shot redesign where I could build but I could build a pretty like comprehensive build plan to convert the entire app within kind of an afternoon to this new consistent design style.
That's great.
Yeah. And so, the finished product, that this took about, I would say an afternoon. And I think it's a little cleaner, it's a little nicer. And it was also a really good chance to try to see how Figma Make was working.
Yeah, that's awesome. That it does look great. I do think that it looks very well polished, and it doesn't have the, how do I say, the smell of AI generated. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure we've seen enough AI generated sites where it's like, okay, that just kind of has that appearance to it. Yeah.
So like I think this is where there's like you'll never beat functionality. Like a lot of people can spend too much time obsessing about design, and I'm probably one of them. but in something that's B2C, and something where there are quite a lot of competitors, I really wanted to make sure that it's got to feel, I would say premium. It's got to feel not like something that, someone can just, push off in an afternoon. I think that
Mhm.
it's the quality level and then the taste level, which I think is what we're rapidly advancing to being like the new standard, because like pretty good is very easy to get to.
Makes sense. So this journey, it was like 9 months or so, 8 months?
No, much less. I would say like I took some time off the summer, and it was October is where I started playing around with it more seriously. And
Hmm.
then in November is when the version one really came together, started doing some testing with some friends over December. And so January is where I'm going to be start publicly talking about it, marketing it, and trying to get to the next level, which is really finding collaborators to work on, and then getting to a place where I can validate my approach of sort of progressive degradation of the internet is actually something that's valuable to enough people, because I can extend it. The thoughts are long term. I'd like to extend this into the world of e-commerce and the world, kind of explore making a different variation of ad block. E-commerce is
Hmm.
like the number one of the biggest sources of manipulation for most people. Like the amount of small nudges that happen when you're on Amazon or any Shopify site or anything like that is incredible. So there's a whole feature set around that. Starting small, want to validate that this approach is even viable, and so that's where we are right now.
Very cool. What would be something that you would tell yourself as like, like a lesson that you have learned and that you know now that, maybe you'd want to tell yourself from 3 months ago?
It's very easy to get lost in the sauce, so to speak. Like it's very easy to get lost in your own, this is a great idea, like space. So having some external sources of people to tell you, like to at least like validate or invalidate some of your ideas, really, really helpful. I would also say that a lot of times, like try and optimize for simplicity, both like simplicity in the feature itself, but also simplicity in the development side of things, especially in the early days. If you sort of over index for simplicity, even if you know down the road you're going to have to do it again, the
Mm.
cost of redoing work right now is so low. Try and set yourself up on a foundation of things that can be sort of taken in and taken out, and the house of cards won't all fall apart as you redevelop it, because it's not ridiculous to think that you will redo your app 3, 4, or 5 times over the first few years of its life as you learn your users, as you change your flows, as you scale. It's a very different way of thinking about software development, where things can be a little bit more disposable, but you also have to have some discipline around making sure that you're choosing not highly overly convoluted patterns.
Yeah, makes sense. The spirit of essentialism. It sounds like that's what it is.
I am curious, as you were talking about that, the last point, Andrew. How did you personally think about focusing on the right thing to be working on at that given time, instead of, it can be really easy to dive into infinite market research because it's so easy to do now, or dive into infinite building because it's so easy to do now.
Yeah. So I had developed a system, but I actually just went to what I would do for any product team. So I've got my own personal OKRs. Try to work in like 2 week sprints thereabouts, and so I have a system of like sort of what I want to accomplish for the month, written in sort of OKRs style terminology. I try and keep it no more than 3 objectives, and then I try and break. I've got a big backlog of essentially it's just like a parking lot for ideas. Some of them are marketing ideas, some of them are research, blah, 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 that kind of thing. And so I have, a sprint meeting with myself where I try and, build out what I want to accomplish that will move towards those OKR goals. Sometimes it would be like, do 20 interviews. Sometimes it would be like this feature, and that feature. Sometimes it would be like build the brand, that kind of thing. So I found that immensely helpful, because you're right, like there's endless things to focus on. I also try, because I also do work for the TPMA and I have some consulting and contracting gigs on the side. I always try and keep my mornings for this project, that way I know like I'm making incremental progress every single day.
I love
Makes
that.
sense.
Thank you.
Well, this has been great. Heydays looks like it's really awesome. It's a great problem to be tackling. It's a hairy one, that's for sure. But I think that makes it all the more rewarding to see folks like yourself making a dent in that problem.
Well, thanks, David. And thanks for having me on. I was going to say, just before we wrap, I will be posting a few tools like what my Claude design. So within your IDE, you can have a design skills file for Claude or for Cursor or anything to follow. I'm going to be posting what mine looks like and like my approach to creating it. So today we talked a lot about, sort of my approach to using these tools to do a redesign. Well, the end result of that is a design philosophy and a sort of a component system. And so I have a few full files and sort of formats that I use to keep my AI buddies on track when it comes to implementing design. So I'm going to be sharing those.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, we certainly add them
Thank
to the
you.
show notes. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And it's Heyday. And so you can find it at heydayfocus.com. And I suppose, where can people find you?
I'm on LinkedIn, Andrew Williams, or on Twitter or X as Andrew_reset. And same thing with Substack. So I'm just about to launch a Substack as well. So it's Andrew Reset.
Awesome. And
Awesome.
we know that you'll be looking at those sites in black and white.
Absolutely. I recommend you too as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Andrew, for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me.